When we speak about Christianity, perhaps religious images come to mind. Images of churches, of worshippers, perhaps images of the Bible or the saint or the figure of Jesus. But if we add the word esoteric to it, what does that mean? We can approach Christianity as an expression of an outward looking perspective, so divinity, religion, church, prayer, but we can also look at inwardly. This is another perspective, a different key to the inner dimension of Christianity, a perspective where understanding is not painted by what we are taught, not dictated by theology and dogma, but by a deep personal experience, an understanding that resonates with our spiritual quest beyond religion, down to the reality of our consciousness. This perspective offers a different understanding where Christianity is a manifestation of the gnosis of universal wisdom. In this way, Christianity is not defined by events or a phase in human history, but it is a part of universal wisdom, part of teachings that are not just a few thousand years old, but as ancient as humanity itself. It's a wisdom not bound to any specific religion, but that represents the essence of all religions. So the purpose of universal teachings is to guide us toward the true meaning of our life. They point to an original unity with the all, and they emphasize a possibility or the possibility for humanity, for each one of us, to access this original state of unity again. The unity with the all, with the divine, with the universal life force. This possibility has always been available to humanity. There exists an omnipresent force that calls upon us and helps us when we want to, when we are seeking, when we want to transform our consciousness. It helps to reunify with the universal consciousness. We call this force gnosis. And this is the direct knowledge of God, the first-hand knowledge of God. This is something that must be personally experienced. It cannot be taught. This knowledge, this wisdom enables us to penetrate the essence of life. And then we can act in line with this higher manifestation from a completely different standpoint. It's a new paradigm. So, how can we today connect to this knowledge, to gnosis? Well, this cannot be obtained in the usual way by accumulating theories, studying, amassing concepts of theories, and burdening ourselves, our consciousness with good intentions and so on. Gnosis comes through lived experience. It is the school of life, and it's the gaining insight on a very deep level. Gnosis is more than just a force or radiation or light. It is a radiance from the eternal kingdom, the universal divine life field. The seeker can recognize it and can consciously connect to it. So, what must we do then to achieve this goal? Sacred scriptures from all time, so not only the Christian Gospels, but also ancient teachings like the Vedas from India or the teachings from the Emerald Tables from Hermes Trismegistus, so in the Egyptian traditions, and countless others. They all show this path of self-initiation into this unmanifested a state of universal consciousness, albeit they show it only in veiled forms. So each of these teachings is touching or was touching on the consciousness of humanity in the appropriate form for that time and place in the world. So the Christian Gospels, they also testify of gnosis. They are addressing different spirals or states of consciousness. So therefore, the Gospels can be interpreted in various ways, depending on our own state of consciousness. And they are often seen merely as stories about the life of Jesus. But today we will explore these texts as an inner guide to help us to reconnect with the divine seed, the spirit spark in our heart. We will focus on 4 figures from the gospel stories and their significance for our own inner journey. So these figures, they are Herod, John the Baptist, Jesus, and Christ. So they are not 4 separate persons, but rather 4 distinct states of consciousness. They are in the same human being. They are representing the process of transformation. So let us begin with the stage of Herod.
Behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him."
Herod symbolizes the ego, the self-aware state of egocentric consciousness. The natural I being recognizes the birth, the nascent possibility of a new state of consciousness, the baby Jesus, but it is not ready to accept it. So each one of us has a Herod within. As a ruler, Herod represents the limit of what can be achieved through the ego. When we reach the full potential of our ego, of our self-awareness, when we have reached the limit of everything we can do from an egocentric standpoint, something new and fundamentally different awakens within us, a new state of consciousness. Yet, the familiar egocentric consciousness tries to suppress it and maintain its usual way of life, and it's trying to, by muffling and eliminating this new voice within us. We start a quest for new answers about the true meaning of existence. We become seekers of the truth, of our true self. And this marks the shift from the first stage of consciousness, Herod, to the second stage, the stage of John the Baptist.
There came a man sent from God, whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify about the light, so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but he came to testify about the light.
John represents the awakened state of consciousness that understands that it needs to let go of all the old ways of living life, to let go of life based on the ego consciousness, the Herod state. It is a seeker driven by an active spirit spark in the heart. And at this stage, our consciousness begins to experience the desert of life, the emptiness, the futility of everything we have gained in our life, in our material world so far. Outwardly, we live the best life we can. We fulfill our obligations in our family, our social circles, at work. But inside, it's like a desert, because the real meaning of existence is still far from us. But we keep walking the desert. We keep seeking. we go up to the very limit of our own consciousness. Various traditions, they depict this limit or boundary as a river or a sea. So, for example, the Nile in the Egyptian tradition, the Red Sea in the Hebrew tradition, and in Christianity, it's the River Jordan. Then, in the state of John, John approaches the limit at the Jordan River. And there he announces to all people around him, this means or is symbolic for every aspect of his consciousness, his thoughts, his feelings, his reactions. He announces this truth he yearns for. He sees this truth at the border, the Jordan River, at the border of his egocentric consciousness. And this truth is represented by Jesus. So John recognizes this much higher state of awareness, consciousness enlightened by the universal principle within himself. He sees the universal divine aspect in his heart. He sees it coming toward him. He sees the other one, and he says, he must increase, but I must decrease. In this moment, the seeker recognizes and opens to this universal divine aspect in his or her heart. The other one, the new state of consciousness. It is emerging within him or her. And this takes us to the third state of consciousness, Jesus. This state initiates an inner revolution, a complete turnaround within the human being.
If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake, he is the one who will save it. For what is a man profited if he gains the whole world and loses or forfeits himself?
Jesus represents a completely new consciousness. We could call it a new soul. This new soul can go beyond the limits of the old state of consciousness, beyond the ego state, beyond the River Jordan. And this new soul can approach the spirit, the universal consciousness. A revolution begins within the individual, one that displaces the former ruler Herod, the egocentric state of consciousness. And this is why it is said, whoever loses his life for my sake. So we could also say, whoever loses his egocentric life for my, the new soul's sake. This is what is actually meant. So the ego consents to humble itself, to protect and nurture the growing new soul. In this process of inner turnaround, of deep transformation, the 12 dynamic forces that underlie human life, they begin to change. They are represented, for instance, by the 12 pairs of our cranial nerves, or the influence of the 12 zodiacal signs, or to use again example of the Gospels, the 12 apostles. So the Gospels, they speak of numerous miracles, such as the healing of the blind and lame and the resurrection of the dead. And all these miracles, they signify a fundamental transformation within us, a transformation in how we perceive and interact with the world around us, how we begin to live our lives in a different way, because it's the inner turnaround. So the third state of consciousness lies beyond the limit of the common human consciousness. So remember, the boundary that is symbolized by the Jordan River, it's beyond the egocentric consciousness. And that's why the Gospels speak of miracles. Jesus is the new soul who begins to guide this process by accepting the transforming powers of the divine spirit. So all of this is done in the force of Jesus with this new soul state. So, but we must support the growth of Jesus, this new consciousness within us, through two important steps: self-knowledge and purification. And then the new forces, they can flow into our system and renew our inner life. We call these new forces new etheric energies. They are the bread Jesus shares with his disciples and the wine that is actually presenting a new radiation that can purify our desires, our emotional life, so our astral energy. It's a new etheric and the new astral energy, the bread and the wine. Until the time when Christ appears, all three of these figures, Herod, John, and Jesus, all these three states of consciousness, they are present simultaneously within the individual. So the ego, the seeker, and the developing new soul, they are all there at the same time. They influences, they are felt, so we can feel them one after the other, but also simultaneously. And this is all why we learn our life lesson. When the third state of consciousness, Jesus, has gone the entire path of transformation of all aspects of existence, then the fourth state of consciousness takes place, the stage of Christ.
Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures, and he was buried. And he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures.
When we speak of Christ in the context of universal wisdom, we refer to, firstly, to the universal light and wisdom that flow endlessly into this world here and in a form that can touch and guide humanity. And it encourages us to recognize and initiate this spiritual path of this inner transformation. And secondly, Christ also symbolizes the organic transformation of the new human being. And this is a process that transforms our lives from the inside out. After 3 days, then Christ rises from the dead. And 3 is an important number here. He rises after transforming the three sanctuaries of his consciousness: the heart sanctuary, the head sanctuary, and the sanctuary of life or pelvis. So the three centers of egocentric consciousness. And the grave is found empty because nothing remains of the old ego or the egocentric state of personality. The candidate now lives from a new source. The heart is connected to the incoming divine light and no longer connected to the ruler of this world or Herod. So the heart is no longer living from the egocentric consciousness. We all carry the seed for this process in our heart, and this new perspective on life, we have it all within us. This is the birth of light in the human heart. And these retransformations, they must occur to progress from one state of consciousness to the next.
This circulation of light begins within us, originating from the spirit spark that connects us to the universal light in our microcosm. The second transformation, from John to Jesus, the light penetrates the head sanctuary, marking the beginning of a completely new consciousness. The third transformation, from Jesus to Christ, the new consciousness, which has grown from the spirit spark within us, can now connect with its origin, the universal divine spirit. The entirety of our being can thus be transfigured into a new existence.
How does all this apply to us in the 21st century? How does my life change as we follow this process? All the things that grabbed our attention and our energy, our desires, our wants, our needs, they begin to lose their grip on our consciousness. we begin to see everything around us more objectively, it is as if we see ourselves less as the center of the world, but more as an observer. And then when we begin to see the newborn soul, Jesus, as the gate, as the singularity in our own being, as the most important figure in our being, we are on the path of finding the true meaning and fulfillment of our life. As we begin to understand and see the truth, the divine plan for our lives, we can begin to accept things as they are and embrace the necessary cycles in our life. We stop worrying incessantly over everything that impacts our perception of the world, the small things and also the big changes. And even the injustices in the world, we begin to see it differently, but without losing our compassion for our fellow human beings. We actually are taking our compassion to a deeper level of a true connection and impersonal love for humanity. By stepping out of the ego's control, we empower ourselves and make it easier for others to follow suit. We allow the truth of our true purpose in life to penetrate our consciousness and radiate to the world around us. This represents a fundamentally new approach to life. This path is possible for everyone. It leads to a new life rather than the same old, all these repetitions. So all spiritual Gnostic schools of the past, as well as the Golden Rosy Cross today, they exist to make this path known to humanity. And they want to enable us to follow it so that we can become agents of change for humanity. The necessary steps along this journey, they are available to all of us, beginning in the rose of our heart, within the spirit spark. And there lies the beginning of this transformation. Angelus Silesius, a German mystic from the 15th century, he expressed it like this.
If Christ 1,000 times in Bethlehem be born, and not within thyself, thy soul will be forlorn.
With this understanding, the meaning of Christmas takes on a profoundly different significance. It is not merely a historical event in which we may or may not believe. It is not something that occurs outside of us. It cannot be limited to a specific time of the year. Instead, it symbolizes the path of inner transformation and the reconnection with the divine spirit. And it's allowing us to become the true and free human beings once again. And in the darkness of our egocentric nature, this is the stable of Bethlehem. There, the true light of the Spirit. It is born or can be born in our hearts.